When she becomes aware of her mission, she will have to decide for herself if she will awaken as a divine dragon or remain as an elf. The message is a bit of a relief to Russel because if she were forced to awaken as a divine dragon, she would have been bound to him as the Dragon Lord. Still confused, Elo asks him why she's in his room, so he explains that she fainted in front of the gate and he had to bring her to his place in a hurry. Upon hearing what happened, she's glad he was the one who found her and wonders if this happened because of the horns. Apparently, a silver light flew at her before she lost consciousness, and it seems the dragon's essence within her has awakened. When she realizes that her accomplices must be worried, she decides to head out to go see them, and she prays that the blessings of the forest be with him on his path before she leaves. The next day, it turns out that Russel has more time on his hands than he had expected, as he thought it would take 20 days to find the dragon's traces. He decides to use the opportunity to go see Miggy and his friend at their forge. Once he reaches their forge, he shows them an object from his compartment for them to appraise. They sense that the object has incredibly pure mana, as if the stone itself is condensed mana, almost like a dragon's heart. However, the mana's purity is too high for it to be the heart of a dragon from the lower dragon race, and too small for the heart of a higher species. So, they ask him to leave it with them for a while so they can properly check it out, to which Russel agrees. The dwarves rejoice after he agrees and quickly go consult the dragon encyclopedia right away, and Russel feels like they're excited mages who have just secured research funds. Shortly after, Russel heads to the Grand Library after having been referred by Miggy. The underground library is quite unique and contains precious knowledge. Normally, it's not allowed for Russel to be here, but he's allowed because he has the recommendation from Meisters. A Meister is the cream of the crop among the artisans found in the dwarf race, and only about 1 in 1,000 receives that title, of which the 2 dwarves he meets are, which is quite unexpected. The underground library is pretty spacious, and it seems pretty different from the theories of the surface world. At this point, he has 19 days to return to the Flame Tower, so he's going to try to surpass the 6th circle barrier within that time. However, after 19 days, our boy realizes his goal isn't that easy, and it may just be too soon for him. He heads to the forge to retrieve the object because he has to leave that day and say goodbye to them. They're shocked he has to leave soon and try to persuade him to stay for a few days because they haven't been able to find out anything extraordinary about the object, even though they've made some progress. So far, they found out that the Mana Stone didn't form naturally, and it's an artificial object created for a definite purpose by someone. When Russel asks what brought them to that conclusion, they explain that the alchemical reactions were similar to something they've seen before. They show him a book that seems to explain that the object is a type of magnum opus created by breaking down and diluting a part of something. Magnum opus is an alchemy word that means masterpiece. They seem to believe that this Mana Stone has value comparable to the Philosopher's Stone, but the main issue is that they've not been able to find out what it was made from. However, Russel thanks them since the information is more than enough and thanks them for helping him know how amazing the underworld truly is. They both ask him to come anytime he can. As he leaves, he figures that the material for the Mana Stone is likely a draconic heart, which would be quite shocking. When he reaches the place Olsen had asked to meet, he doesn't see him, but he soon shows up looking shiny because he had applied something to his body. Apparently this oil is the secret behind the dwarf's muscle strength, and Olsen plans to modify it for humans when they get back, which was his initial research purpose. When he notices that Russel looks troubled, Olsen asks if his research is not going well, but Russel confesses that he actually got what he came here for. So Olsen senses that the thing bothering him is the wall of becoming a 6th circle mage. Apparently Russel is able to see it, but he can't cross over, which is frustrating. Olsen recalls a saying that 100 mages will have 100 different enlightenments, which shows how delicate the matter of enlightenment is. Even well-meaning advice can be detrimental, so it's an unwritten rule not to interfere. However, a few basic pieces of advice should be fine. Suddenly Olsen asks Russel if he knows he can lift 1,500 pounds, which is about 680 kilograms, but this is Russel's first time hearing that. Apparently Olsen wasn't able to lift that weight at the start, but after constant effort on top of even more effort, it became possible one day. He advises that enlightenment when it comes to magic is the same because if you work diligently every day, it suddenly comes to you. Those words resound in Russel's mind, and he realizes that he has to be patient because he's grown significantly compared to a month ago. While they walk, Olsen points at the sunset and how magnificent the sunset over the Red Canyon is. The sunset light blurs the boundary of the sky and earth, and everything Russel has learned and the walls he's built up brick by brick feel as if there's a greater enlightenment waiting just beyond. Suddenly, our boy experiences a mental projection into his mind, and he realizes that everything he's learned and experienced is expressed in formulas. Upon seeing the burning red sunset, he decides to add the formulas he knows to the image of the burning red sunset, and he suddenly creates an original construct known as the falling sun. The energy released is so strong that Olsen has to stop him because he seems to be planning to set the canyon on fire. When Russell seems to be in a trance, Olsen casts a sleep spell on him, and he passes out on his shoulders. Although he had advised him about enlightenment, he didn't expect it to come to him so suddenly, and this is going to cause quite a stir in the academic world. At this point, Russell is the youngest 6th Circle Mage. The system soon announces that he's reached the 6th Circle and will be rewarded with the highest grade Mana Stones, advanced grade Mana Stones, intermediate grade Mana Stones, and lowest grade Mana Stones, as well as an unknown reward. Sometime later, at the Flame Tower, Russell recalls the Falling Sun original construct he had made that allowed him to become a 6th Circle Mage. There's a strong feeling of mana flowing through his veins, which is different from what he used to experience as a 5th Circle Mage. Apart from that, he received the 2nd Golden Mask as a reward for becoming a 6th level Mage. Unlike the previous one that helped in attack calculations, this one is a debuff immunity artifact specialized in curse defense, and it'll help resist the sorcery of the pagans. Master Daria is glad that he's back and asks him how the underworld is. Before she can finish her statement, she recognizes that he's already surpassed the wall, so he admits that the external research was helpful. It's only been a year since he's fully mastered 5th Circle magic, and it seems that Master Daria underestimated the kid's talent because she thought it'd take him at least a few more years. Regardless, she's so proud of him and tells him that it's expected of her disciple, and he pledges to continue to strive forward. Another funny thing that's on Master Daria's mind is how furious Master Melville will be when he finds out about this. She suddenly proposes that they see the skills of their remarkable youngest, so she teleports them to an open space to practice. This scenario reminds Russell of the day before the expedition of the ruins, when it was hard for him to face one giant. Meanwhile, Master Daria figures that the challenge against those giants must be much easier for him now, so she decides to raise the difficulty to match his level using one of her original constructs, known as the Firewood Dwarves. The entire place is soon covered by several hundred of the fire golems, but the master reminds him that it's too early to be shocked. Before he can react to that, she curses another original transformation of hers, so she summons a giant firewood king in their midst. At this point, Russell wonders if she's going too far, but he realizes she just wants to get straight to the point. In that case, he decides he has to respond in kind by using his Falling Sun construct, a grand warfare spell that excites Master Daria. He also excitedly bears down the power to show his master his enlightenment and incinerates all the golems using the Falling Sun's power. After he destroys everything, he realizes the destructive power is too strong, and he would have swept allies away in a real battle, which means he's got to be careful. Master Daria soon approaches him, suddenly realizing that the reason he advanced too quickly was because he's been able to tap into mental projection. She asks him what mental image he had in mind to project power, and he tells her it was a burning sunset. That intrigues her because a mental projection is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity for a mage, but what Russell showed her is an unfinished spell that still needs improvement, and the thought of him being able to complete it excites her. Watching the growth of a disciple she took on in her late years is quite entertaining to her. Sometime later, while Russell is alone in his house, he recalls how the master had told him that she'd officially request a circle achievement registration with the association because he excelled in casting speed, power, and rarity as an original mage. The master acknowledging him means a lot, so the next task on his list is to absorb the mana in the wind essence horn that Silvator gave to him, and the mana stones he got as rewards. There's so much that it would take quite some time for him to absorb them all, so he begins by stabbing himself with the horn. After absorbing from morning till night, the system notifies him that he's absorbed the Divine Dragon King's horn with wind essence to the limit, and mana exceeding the absorbable limit will be absorbed by his latent power. The latent power will be available at the moment of awakening and grant him great power, and his advanced wind attribute understanding has greatly improved. Although his understanding has improved, his rank is still the same. Furthermore, his body feels a bit lighter, and it may be because it's the wind attribute. Suddenly, he makes a punch and releases a great amount of power, even though he lightly swung his fist. If he strengthened his body with Overload Wizard Body, along with this, he might just be able to face second-grade knights without magic now. While he's thinking, he's soon told that he has a visitor request, and he tensely wonders if it's the princess. As he has suspected, he goes out to meet the princess, who asks him about his journey to the underworld. She explains that she was so curious about his adventure that she rushed here despite knowing that it's rude. However, Russell cheerfully asks her to ask him whatever she wants about the things he saw in the underworld, but she says she has to ask about something else first. As Russell grows tense by the question he knows is coming, the system notifies him that his new mission is to respond to the princess's heart, because Princess Hecate Rathmos has been waiting a long time for his answer, and it's his turn to give her a response. Some of the rewards for this mission include an intermediate-grade mana stone and a pair of Eros and Psyche's rings. The question she asks him is if he thought of her while he was gone, and Russel is pushed to a corner when he realizes this is a mission. After she asks the question, Russel becomes red and replies that her joke is too much. His reaction puts her at ease because she thinks teasing him is fun since he's always so stiff. She finally states that it seems her efforts haven't been in vain after all. Regardless, she explains that she isn't asking for an answer right now, but she only hopes that he'll consider it. By efforts, she's referring to the fact that she's been approaching Russel constantly since the last ball, but he kept pushing her away with the excuse of being busy with revenge, which makes him feel like a coward now. When she notices that the time has passed, she mentions that time seems to disappear rather than pass when she's with him. But it's a shame that she won't be able to get the answer she was expecting today. Before she can finish her statement, Russel goes on his knees, brings out the rings, and confesses that he is stiff as she had said. And because of that, the only thing he can say is that he looks forward to his future with her. Shocked, Hecate gets up and jokes that he doesn't know the slightest bit about mood. However, she acknowledges that it's strange that his words, even devoid of style or mood, sound so sweet to her. She accepts his ring and confesses that she looks forward to the future with him too. She reminds him to be prepared because she'll tease him for a lifetime as punishment for daring to make her wait. Shortly after that, the day of the princess's engagement party comes, and there's a lot of ruckus in the city as preparations for wine, food, and entertainment are made. A delegation from Kiel arrives, and Crown Prince Saron of the Golden Sand Dunes considers the festivities unnecessary pomp. But the great shaman Kasa of the Golden Sand Dunes, who accompanies him, explains that this level of grandeur is needed to showcase a young man who has become a 6th Circle mage at the very young age of 20. Regardless, Saron believes it's just a ploy to increase allies against the Empire, especially because of the number of countries they invited. Saron expresses that he's tired of this boring talk and hopes they just get on with the ceremony because he wants to see what this Russel guy looks like. Meanwhile, Russel is shocked that he has to wear 4 tuxedos for the banquet, and even formal attire, and asks Sir Alan if engagements are always so complicated. Alan, however, corrects that it's not a simple engagement because numerous envoys from surrounding countries that are not allies are attending, and His Majesty probably doesn't want to just end the engagement as just a joyous festival, but also wants to achieve some political aim. It may not just be about solidifying royal power, it might also be a stage to showcase Endymion's power. Russel tensely realizes that the best card Endymion has to show off is him, so his role will be crucial. Alan assures him he'll do well and makes him start to study etiquette. Sometime later, after the tables are set, the announcement of Hecate Rathmos is made as the first heir to the throne of the Endymion royal family. After she appears, the announcement of the groom, Count Russel Raymond, is also made, and our boy steps out elegantly. While he steps out, one of the guests doubts that this young man is really on par with the Tower Master because he doesn't seem that impressive. So Prince Saron asks him to just check instead of grumbling from the back. When the man irritably asks how he can check, Saron snaps his fingers and a series of magical snakes rush towards Russel, which makes Hecate scream. Russel, on the other hand, assures her not to worry, especially because he was wondering what to do. But it seems the stage has been set perfectly. He does a circle projection that shows his 6 rings and burns up the snakes at the same time. And the guest is shocked to see that he's really a 6th Circle mage. After Russel does the circle projection, he shoots up some fire into the sky and releases a series of fireworks to increase the festivity. Saron is impressed to know that he was hiding this level of magic power, which is beyond what the rumors said. Meanwhile, somewhere in the woods, one of the pagans speaks with Archduke Bismarck through the skull and learns of the engagement of the disciple of their sworn enemy, Daria, with a member of the royal family of Endymion. The Archduke acknowledges that an individual basically on par with the Tower Masters has become a member of the royal family. While the pagan cultist is speaking to the Archduke, he is ambushed by a monster in the forest, but he soon subjects it under control and assures Bismarck that it was only a rat that dared to bare its teeth when the monster's roar is heard. Regardless, the pagan sarcastically congratulates the Archduke for adding such a skilled person to his royal family. But Bismarck corrects that he's never seen any of them as his family, but as dirty usurpers who took his place. When Bismarck asks about the excavation going on in the forest, the pagan confesses that it looks like it'll take a few more years, and then they can't guarantee how many keystones will be intact. The Archduke confirms if their performance is guaranteed, and the pagan affirms that they are the Tartanos keystones, used to seal the giants who once vied for supremacy over this continent. And even a few is enough to restrain even an 8th Circle mage. The problem is that the seal of Tartanos, which they just messed with a little, has caused the monsters of the forest to start going berserk. However, that's good news to the Archduke. who believes that the rampaging creatures can draw attention and weaken Endymion's forces, who can proceed with the plan faster. It's amusing to the pagan that the Archduke can be happy at the death of his own country's citizens, which makes him a tyrant. The only reason they were able to achieve this is because they erased and damaged the records of the era of gods, including the stories about the otherworldly savior and the giants. The black-haired hero from another world joined forces with the dragons to seal the giants as one of his great feats. But it's a story that must never be passed down to future generations, so it doesn't ruin their plans. Oddly, the pagan realizes that Daria's disciple also has black hair and an abnormally fast growth rate, which could mean that he had inherited the bloodline of the otherworldly savior. Even if that's the case, he reasons that it happened thousands of years ago, and he wouldn't have been able to fully inherit the savior's lineage. Regardless, he plans to raise the level of the threats to him, just to be safe. After the ceremony, Count Russel is ambushed by several people who try to talk to him at once. They're nobles from the countryside, local territory lords, and even from other countries, which means he'll be stuck here for a while. While he's engaging with them, he's suddenly approached by Saron, the Prince of the Golden Dunes, who comes to congratulate him on the engagement of the century. Russel remembers that this was the guy who summoned the snakes, so he jokingly thanks him for the gift but asks him to give him something else next time. Russel asks him if he was satisfied with his reactions, and it impresses Saron that Russel didn't get annoyed by being tested, so he proposes an alliance with him. The Golden Sand Dunes is one of the richest countries on the continent. If they become allies, they'll be of great help in the war with the Empire. However, Saron clarifies that instead of an alliance between their countries, he would like to form an alliance with Russel specifically. Eventually, both men shake hands, looking forward to their alliance. 3 days later, our boy is finally relieved that the ceremony is over. While he's alone, the princess comes to see him and sympathizes with the fact that he's tired since he's not used to such events. She brought with her some business documents that had piled up because of her engagement ceremony, but she finished quickly because she wanted to come see her fiancé. Her words make Russel turn red again, and he accuses her of teasing him once more. He notices a letter among the documents, which Hecate says is his. Upon opening it, he realizes it's a request letter for research she made on his behalf, so he won't have to walk on eggshells when he wants to go out by himself. She asks if it was unnecessary, but Russel hugs her from behind and thanks her for thinking of him. It amuses her that he's so happy about something she ought to do, and she suddenly says she's tired. Finally, she turns to him seductively and proposes they turn off the lights, and Russel agrees. They soon go to bed and passionately make love. Sometime later, at the City-State Alliance in a place called Nasal, an officer who handles freelance mages explains to a man that they don't have what he's looking for, only third circle mages. The man protests that only a fourth circle mage can repel a pirate ship, and one mage suddenly enters upon hearing the request. When the man asks who he is, he presents his ID token. His name is Ridman Lewis. He's 38 years old and a freelance fourth circle mage. He soon introduces himself formally and states that he's looking for job requests that'll be going to Kulil Island. But he's in fact Russel, using some cloaking magic to change his identity. Soon after, they go on the journey, and things seem peaceful so far. Russel hopes that nothing problematic happens before they reach Kulil Island. Meanwhile, another fourth circle mage named Karl Naiman grabs one of his friends, Aiden Owl, who is a third circle mage, and urges him to drink with them. Aiden protests that they shouldn't be drinking during a bodyguarding mission, but Karl explains that they won't get drunk, especially because this is a beer that he personally chilled using his chilling magic. Eventually, Aiden gives in, and Karl offers Ridman some beer too, which he reluctantly obliges. Ridman wasn't expecting to meet Aiden Owl here. In the future, he'll become the person to make great waves within the academic world, as he succeeds in his research to increase a potion's efficacy by around 20%. But, because he was sponsored by Archduke Bismarck, he had no choice but to hand it over to the Empire. However, this time, Russel plans to ensure Endymion gets it. As they continue to drink, Ridman points out that he can feel a flow of mana from Karl's bracelet, and asks if it's an artifact. To which Karl affirms that it's an artifact used to clear one's mind. While they're celebrating, pirates suddenly appear in about 5 ships. The man who hired them promptly comes out to gather the mages, but Karl smirks because he had drugged the beers he gave to the mages, which has made them pass out. When the owner of the ship arrives, he notices Aiden and Ridman on the ground and realizes that Karl is in league with the pirates. Karl affirms his suspicion and advises him to do a better check on people's backgrounds, then tells him to go to the pirate ship if he doesn't want to die. Suddenly, Ridman's ring begins to spark, triggering a lightning storm and activating the ring's signature Thunder Giant's hammer, releasing a torrent of lightning at the pirates. Karl is surprised by the sudden lightning, unsure of who caused it, until Ridman gets up and jokingly asks if that scared him. Carl is surprised that Ridman is still able to use magic and realizes he's using an artifact. Since Ridman is still trying to keep his cover that he's a fourth circle mage, he decides to use the artifact as an excuse for every other move he'll be making. As Ridman triggers a fire to engulf Carl, the poor man pleads to be spared, but our boy doesn't listen to his pleading until he's burned to a crisp. After Carl is burned unrecognizably, the ship's owner can't believe that he was a pirate and asks Ridman how he was able to know. Ridman informs him that he saw the artifact that Carl was wearing, which is an artifact that leaks the mana of the user and is probably used to tell the rest of the pirates hiding in this vicinity of his location. Suddenly, the pirates surround the ship and shoot their anchors into it. The owner begins to panic, especially because Ridman, who is a fourth circle mage, can't handle this many pirates, so he begins to consider paying a toll fee to get them to leave. However, Ridman tells him to take care of Aiden while he goes to feed the fishes. Surprisingly, Ridman flies a few feet over the ship and decides to end this in an instant by releasing a fire rain over the pirate ships. Sometime later, after the pirate ships have been destroyed at sea, Aiden wakes up, wondering what had happened to the pirates. Ridman doesn't answer but encourages him to rest for now and informs him that he has infused some fire energy into his mana rod to get rid of the drug's effect. Aiden soon lies back down and apologizes for not paying more attention. Ridman tells him it's alright and asks him if he wrote the research paper he had found on him. Aiden is surprised to see him with the paper, and Ridman explains he picked it up when it fell to the ground while he was moving him into the room. He confesses to Aiden that the research to increase the efficacy of potions that he read from it is quite interesting, and that excites Aiden. Because of that, Ridman offers to help with his research, but Aiden explains that the cost of gathering the potions for the research will cost too much. Even though he's grateful for the offer, Ridman clarifies that money is not the issue and gives him an ID token that he can submit at the Flame Tower, which will help him get the money he needs for the research. Certain that Master Daria will probably be able to recognize the value of this research immediately. When Aiden reads the ID token, he realizes that it belongs to the war mage from the Flame Tower, Russel Raymond, and he almost loses his mind because he's meeting with the famous Russel Raymond. Russel immediately tries to make him quiet and explains that he's in disguise for reasons he can't disclose. Eventually, Aiden confesses that Russel is the first to recognize the value of his research and promises to follow everything he says. Sometime later, they get closer to Kulil Island, but Russel notices that the dots on the map he has have suddenly disappeared, leaving some words. The words say that above the place where the River of Ice and the River of Flames overlap, head to the end of the River of Flames and rise from there. The map's objective seems to be to lead him to that point, but he doesn't understand it just yet. Moments later, the crew lowers the anchor, and the owner of the ship thanks the two mages for helping their merchant association arrive safely. Aiden humbly explains that he didn't do anything, and almost says it was Sir Russell that helped, but suddenly remembers his name is currently Ridman. The merchant hands them some money as a reward, and informs them that he put a little more than the amount stated in the contract, wishing them luck in all their travels. After the man departs, Aiden sulks because he had hoped to learn more from Russell before they had to go their separate ways. Suddenly, Russell transforms back to his original face and informs Aiden that he'll see him at the Flame Tower, then leaves. As our boy goes around the place, there doesn't seem to be a lot of humans around, as expected in a country of beastmen. While walking, he notices a monkey beastman, but eventually decides to go to the bar because it's the best place to gather information in foreign lands. Upon entering, he's welcomed by the bartender and asks for an ice-cold glass of beer. When he overpays for the glass of beer, the bartender protests that the money is too much for a beer, so Russell asks her to treat the change as payment for answering his questions. She smiles and cheerfully asks him what questions he has, so Russell asks if there is a river of flames on the island. The bartender doesn't seem to recognize the river of flames, but explains that there are a few places where he can find flowing lava. Apparently, Kulil Island was formed from the eruption of a volcano, but it hasn't erupted for centuries now. He also asks her if there's a place where the River of Ice and the River of Flames overlap, but she doesn't seem to understand what he's talking about, so he tells her it's okay. Eventually, our boy decides that he'll have to walk around for a bit, so he proceeds to the center of the island. On his way, he runs into the monkey beastman he saw before, who asks him if he needs a guide, stating that he charges 2 silvers for an hour. When the beastman promises that he won't regret hiring him, Russell considers him an a-hole who's simply trying to rip him off in an elaborate scheme, as they usually do. Eventually, Russell decides to follow the monkey man, who explains that there's no race as connected as the monkey men among those that live near the coast. The monkey man explains that they know the area the best, and Russell agrees but asks where he's taking him. The monkey man cheerfully insists that he's taking him where he wants to go, but Russell explains that he doesn't remember telling him where he wants to go. When the monkey realizes he's onto him, he asks when he realized his ploy and why he followed him. So Russell explains that he followed him because he needed someone to do work for him. When the monkeyman realizes he's been had, he complains and tells Russell he was going to spare his life if he handed over his belongings quietly. But he's changed his mind to ripping his skin off. As the group of monkeymen charges at Russell, he casts a lightning spell and asks if he really thinks he would have followed him into his trap if he didn't have anything up his sleeves. The monkeyman immediately recognizes the spell as a wide-range spell and tells everyone to retreat because this will sting a bit. Before they can react to the order, the lightning chain hits them all and wipes them out. Russell spares the one that brought him there and tells him he has some questions that he'll have to answer nicely while holding the lightning spell in front of his eyes. Russell asks him about a place where the river of ice and the river of flames overlap, but the monkey apologizes because he's never heard of a place like that. When Russell asks if he was lying about being the most knowledgeable when it comes to Kulil Island, the monkeyman fearfully explains that there isn't such a place on the outer ring of the island. When Russell asks if it could be in the inner ring, the monkeyman confesses not to know what's in the inner ring, which means that Russell would have to go there on his own. When Russell proceeds to go to the inner ring, the monkeyman protests because those inside are not ordinary, are quite hostile by nature, and will charge at him immediately if they come to know that an outsider human has stepped into their territory. Shortly after, Russell heads to the inner ring, and he's approached by some of the locals, who ask if he's the outsider that's causing a stir on the island. Their leader states that he's tinier than they thought, and Russell realizes they have no killing intent at all, but just a desire to fight. He wonders if the instinct of beastmen is only to pursue strength, so he cheerfully asks if they're there to fight him. The leader affirms that he knows why they're here and apologizes because this is their natural instinct. The leader asks him to say when he's ready, so Russell cheerfully says they can start. The leader likes his personality and jumps at him, hoping to see if he's got skills to match his words. As the beastman charges at him, our boy realizes that he won't be able to stop that charge with a half-assed spell, so he has to condense his mana as much as possible. Packing more punch into the attack, our boy releases a shockwave, which the beastman commends but states that he still can't push him back with that level of strength, because this level of magic is nothing. As the beastman attempts to charge through using sheer strength, he's soon knocked backward and thrown several feet away. The other guys watch in shock as their boss was thrown away with a single hit. Realizing this mage must be strong, the rest quickly run to Russell to beg him to fight them next, but their boss quickly comes to chase them away, commanding them to stand back because the mage isn't someone that two of them can handle. The boss's quick recovery makes it look as if he didn't take any damage because that amount of power would have broken bones, but it seems that the beastman's body is optimized for combat. Russell reasons that he could easily become above superhuman if he knew how to use aura. Our boy asks the beastman if he'd like to continue, to which he gladly agrees, but explains that he can't do that because his body is battered and he doesn't think he can fight anymore. Eventually, the boss agrees to his loss and commends Russell on a good fight. Finally, he asks our boy what brings him to the inner ring, especially because humans only trade on the outer ring. Russell explains that he's looking for the place where the river of ice and the river of flames overlap, but the beastman explains that he's never heard of a place like that. The beastman suggests that he heads into the divine region because he might be able to find some clues there. The divine region is the holy land where a god resides, and the beastman explains that he's never been there before, but he suspects that's the only place the thing he mentioned could be in. Russell recalls that there were records of the first beast king, Fenrir, being a mixed dragon, and he has no choice but to investigate this, since he got the clue from the altar in the underworld. Days later, Russell defeats another beastman in the inner circle, and it seems to be his 17th fight just that day. The boss beastman he fought with had told him that he needs the acknowledgement of the great warriors and great elders in order to enter the divine region, but he has to prove his strength to get their acknowledgement. So far he's been fighting for 15 days straight, but no one has shown up to acknowledge him. Not long after, another beastman from the Jaguar tribe shows up and asks him if he's the rumored outsider human. When he confirms, the beastman asks him to follow him because there's someone looking for him. Russell spots the knot around his waist and identifies that it's the symbol of a great warrior, so he asks him if it's a great warrior or a great elder that's looking for him. The beastman tells him that it's Muya, the beast king. Our boy was expecting a great warrior or great elder to look for him, but he never expected to meet the beast king, which is a bigger catch than he could ever dream of. A while ago, Muya had called some beastmen from the Jaguar tribe to ask if they knew about the outsider who's causing an uproar on the island recently. They confirmed that they know about it, especially because the gatekeepers of several tribes are said to have been defeated. The Beast King seems surprised that people who are almost at the level of a great warrior were defeated, and asks the beastmen to help bring the person who did it. They promise to bring the person to kneel before the king, but Muya asks that they just bring him in quietly, as the king's guest, in the present. While the beastmen from the Jaguar tribe are relaying the information to Russell, who is eager to depart immediately. One of the beastmen stares at Russel in contempt because he looks weaker than the rumors say. The beastman guesses that those who lost to him simply let their guards down and can't believe the king is treating someone like him as a guest. One other beastman notices his mate's hostility and warns him not to let his fighting instincts get ahead of him because they're on a mission. Upon hearing that, the jaguar beastman agrees that he's not stupid enough to mess with the king's guest, and irritably walks up to Russel to inform him that they need to go faster because they're kinda busy. When Russel agrees, the guy leaps into the sky and asks him to try to keep up.